I'm Teisha with Shalom TV's news update for Tuesday, February the 4th, 2014. An IDF soldier was accidentally killed early this morning in Israel in a case of friendly fire. 21-year-old IDF Captain Tal Nachman from Nes Ziona was shot after being mistaken for a terrorist near the security fence with Gaza at around 2 a.m. Israel time during a security operation on the border in which two separate units were operating. One unit spotted what they thought was suspicious movement by a terrorist on top of an armored personnel carrier stationed in the area and fired, missing that person but hitting Nachman by mistake, who was asleep on top of the carrier. He was evacuated to the hospital but died of his injuries a few hours later. Tal Nachman was laid to rest in Nes Ziona's military cemetery this afternoon. In what seemed to be an attempt to smooth over relations with John Kerry, Israeli President Shimon Peres praised the U.S. Secretary of State today, following some remarks back and forth to Kerry's statements this past weekend in Munich, where he seemed to suggest that growing boycotts against Israel would worsen if peace talks with the Palestinians failed. Speaking at a ceremony at the president's residence today, Peres thanked Kerry for his efforts and encouraged them. He said of Kerry, he hasn't come to fight with us, but to bring reconciliation between us. Some in the Israeli government were upset by Kerry's remarks this weekend, feeling that he should discourage boycotts and not make statements that sound like a warning to Israel. The U.S. responded by saying that Kerry's remarks were misrepresented and that he has steadfastly opposed boycotts and stood by Israel. Most recently, U.S. National Security Advisor Susan Rice weighed in, posting on Twitter that personal attacks in Israel directed at Secretary Kerry are totally unfounded and unacceptable, and that the U.S. government has been clear and consistent that we reject efforts to boycott or delegitimize Israel. The Anti-Defamation League tried to explain to Kerry why his remarks in Munich have created such controversy. The ADL sent a letter to the Secretary of State saying that the impact of Kerry's remarks created a reality of its own, which, quote, makes it more likely than less that talks will not succeed and more likely that boycotts will in fact ensue if they fail. ADL National Director Abe Foxman wrote to Kerry that he had great respect for the Secretary of State's efforts to move peace forward and welcomed his perseverance and optimism. However, Foxman wrote, your comments, irrespective of your intentions, will inevitably be seen by Palestinians and anti-Israel activists as an incentive not to reach an agreement, as an indicator that if things fall apart, Israel will be blamed, and as legitimizing boycott activity. Foxman also noted the absence of any talk of consequences to the Palestinians if talks fail. He wrote, it is Palestinians who must hear the message that not only has their rejectionism been the major obstacle to peace, but it has also been the main source of their suffering and misery over the years. It is time for them to make the qualitative leap toward peace and acceptance of the legitimacy of the Jewish state. Foxman said the comments Kerry made in Munich threatened to undo progress being made with the Palestinians in talks by ignoring their consistently looking for reasons to reject the Jewish state. He said Kerry's concerns would have been better left unsaid or rather addressed in private with Israeli officials. Meanwhile, Israel's economy minister Naftali Bennett, who was one of those voicing criticism at Kerry's Munich remarks, said today that his Bayit HaYehudi, or Jewish Home Party, will decide whether to stay in Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition based on the content of Kerry's soon-to-be presented framework deal on the continuation of peace talks with the Palestinians. Bennett said the party would leave in the event that the Israeli government accepts a framework deal that is, quote, not consistent with the faction's principles. Bennett made the comments at the Jerusalem conference, where he also said that if the deal was consistent with his party's principles, they would back the prime minister. And the Jerusalem Post reports that there may be some delay in the framework deal that Kerry is working on. The Post said that U.S. officials suggested to them that the deal might need some more time, that there were still some significant gaps remaining. The 9-month deadline that Kerry had initially set for negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians expires at the end of April. Kerry is expected to present a framework deal to extend that deadline and enable further negotiations. The largest bank in Denmark is the latest company to join the BDS, or Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions movement against Israel. Danske Bank reportedly divested last month from Israel's Bank Hapoalim because of its business in the West Bank. On its website, Danske Bank cited the Israeli bank for its involvement in, quote, construction activities in conflict with international humanitarian law. The bank has a list of 33 firms that it excludes, 4 of which are Israeli. Israel's ambassador to Denmark, Arthur Avnon, accused Danske Bank of focusing disproportionately on Israel. He was quoted as telling news site business.dk that what they are really doing is playing with politics and not, as they say, worrying about moral values or violations of international norms. This action in Denmark follows similar divestment decisions in the Netherlands and Norway. This past Friday, U.S. State Department Deputy Spokeswoman Marie Harf said in response to the recent wave of divestments that boycotts directed against Israel are unhelpful and we oppose them. The U.S. House Committee on Foreign Affairs unanimously passed the U.S.-Israel Strategic Partnership Act of 2014 last week, which included an amendment offered by Representative Chris Smith of New Jersey to enhance U.S.-Israeli coordination in ongoing efforts to combat anti-Semitism. Smith's amendment provides that the State Department will continue to increase coordination on monitoring and combating anti-Semitism together with the government of Israel. Smith, who has long been involved in efforts to fight anti-Semitism and was also involved in efforts to release Jacob Ostreicher from a Bolivian prison, said anti-Semitism is an ugly reality that won't go away by ignoring or wishing it away. Let's cooperate with Israel in this struggle as well. The base bill to which the amendment was added was authored by Representative Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, along with Smith and others. It supports Israeli defense systems and expanding cooperation between the U.S. and Israel in cybersecurity, energy, water, homeland security, agriculture, and alternative fuel technologies. Actress Natalie Portman has joined an Israeli initiative to help refugees from the civil war in Syria. Portman, who was born in Israel, donated money and clothing to Operation Human Warmth, a project launched last month by several Israeli organizations aimed at collecting winter clothes and supplies for Syrian refugees who have been displaced by the civil war in their country. Portman released a statement that she was deeply moved by the project and felt compelled to get involved. She said, in the middle of a brutal winter, these children have no shelter and their lives are in serious jeopardy from the cold. I am proud to take part in an operation where Israeli youth of all backgrounds are taking action to help out those who need it most. Operation Human Warmth is led by Israeli youth group Hanoar Ha'oved V'Halomed and social and education organization Dror Israel, as well as Israeli Flying Aid, which is an Israeli global humanitarian organization. Portman is in Israel at the moment working on a film based on Israeli author Amos Oz's book A Tale of Love and Darkness, which marks her directorial debut. And turning to our Shalom TV programming for Tuesday, February the 4th at 8 o'clock tonight, the subject of marriage and divorce in Israel is addressed at a breakout session of the recent Jewish Federations of North America's General Assembly in Jerusalem. And then at 9 o'clock, Haifa University philosophy professor Aaron Ben-Zeev discusses the philosophy of love. That's on L'Chaim with Mark Golub. It's tonight here on Shalom TV and ShalomTV.com. And that's Shalom TV's news update for Tuesday, February the 4th, 2014. I'm Teisha Bader.